One and done sales is a recipe for business failure. Here's how to fix it. So welcome back to Business Growth Simplified. Today we are continuing our series of Business Growth Book Club, and we are using the concept of ultra reading. So we are going to be ultra reading to solve a problem that I hear a lot in my advisory work, which is how do I solve this one and done? How do I build a relationship with buyers who become repeat buyers? And so if we think about where we could find an answer for this question, one of my favorite books around marketing, because it is so boiled down for people who may not be professional marketers, it is called Marketing Made Simple by Donald Miller. And so that's what we're going to use as our guide today to help us find a strategy for answering this question in a short period of time. So if you've been following the series, you know that when we ultra read, the very first thing that we do is we start an intention, and ultimately is to solve the problem of one-time sales, right? So we want repeat buyers because we want buyers that are committed to us, that are loyal to us, and ultimately we can extend the lifetime value of a customer, right? So that is our intent. We are going to use the book Marketing Made Simple. So I already have that open in my Kindle Reader. Just had it open and it came back to a page that I had previously been on, but let's go back. So this is where we are. This is the cover. It is by Donald Miller with his co-author J.J. Peterson, and one of my favorite books that I recommend all the time. So again, in the table of contents, you can always ultra read with a physical book, but this is going to be a digital version. And so what we want to do is just spend about a minute, I'm not going to set a timer, and figure out which part of the book seems like it might make sense. So again, I've read this book before. This happens to be one that I've read before. But if I were looking at this, I would say, okay, chapter 1, any kind of introduction or chapter 1 when you're ultra reading is probably not what you want to look at, because those tend to be kind of backstory. But chapter 2 talks about the actual stages of a relationship. That might be a clue for us. Introduction to Marketing Made Simple approach. And then down here, they're talking about part 2, which is creating your marketing funnel. And while we may want to have some of that, I think this overarching what would we do to solve the problem of repeat sales feels like it belongs in part 1. Look at this, we should probably look at chapter 2. So let's just go there. So now we're going to spend a couple minutes scanning through and figuring out what is actionable, what is useful about this approach that can help us. So stages of a relationship, why people have to get curious and enlightened before they commit. And so that makes sense, right? It's this idea of, well, maybe we've made a sale, but we haven't gotten them curious and we haven't enlightened them in a way that keeps them coming back. So that kind of makes sense. So we're scanning through, there's always going to be a little bit of story. We have to think about asking, the sale, but then also thinking about the repeat sale. So there's this idea he talks about, looks like the stages of a relationship are curiosity, enlightenment, and commitment. That makes sense. So first they have to be curious about our brand when they are first exposed. Then in some way, if we can enlighten them, and then commitment is ultimately purchases and repeat purchases, right? So let's see. He's telling a little bit story about exploring high-end audio equipment. He lives in Nashville. It's a music town, so that's going to mean there's going to be some sort of expectation around quality. He had been listening using a Bluetooth speaker. So again, we're just scanning and we're looking for ways that we can figure out. So he goes to a store, scanning, looks like he's got this gorgeous storefront that he went into. Ultimately, how are they going to make him curious, right? So it's like they've got to entice him about the kind of sound that he wants and what he's going to be using it for. And now that his curiosity is piqued, it's time to kind of go to a next step. So that's a little bit interesting. He says that curiosity is a snap judgment. So at some level, when you're in a relationship with a potential buyer, they're looking for different things. They're throwing out the junk that doesn't make sense to them, and they're kind of trying to find something that they identify with. Okay, so we need to get them to identify with us. Then after we're past the curiosity, we really need to kind of speak to them at some sort of deeper level. It seems like he talks about subconscious mind there, and they're not necessarily curious about you, but they're curious about how that you can solve their problem. That's a really, really important one that I talk a lot about in my work, is that ultimately they're trying to get their problem solved, and it's not really about you and your backstory. Okay, so now enlightenment. Enlightenment obviously has this air of that you are informing them in some way, and we want to think about piquing that curiosity, but also keeping it when we're enlightened. Timing is everything, it says. So he's telling a story about his wife. But again, so sometimes when you're in this relationship, right, you need to nurture it. So that's why this whole concept of lead generation makes sense, but also lead nurturing. If that's not something you're familiar with, lead nurturing is important too. So I think we've spent a little bit of time combing through this chapter, and we need to make sure that we are being thoughtful about the curiosity into the actual nurturing of the relationship, right? That is this idea. So if you are getting the one and dones, so we did our table of contents step, we did our flip and read, and now we're going to decide on what action. So maybe one action makes sense if you're not getting repeat buyers is, did you have curiosity, enlightenment? Maybe you skipped that, and maybe they just made an impulse buy, and then commitment. So again, if we think about what you could do there, it's revisit your funnel or your customer journey. You need to think about whether there are enlightenment or commitment steps. So do you have subscriptions? Do you ask them for a repeat sale? Are you just waiting for them to come back, or are you nurturing them? Are you making them feel good about their purchase so that not only did they make this purchase and they had that dopamine hit in the moment, but as they start to use it, are they using the product? Maybe that's why they're not buying. They're not using it to its fullest. And so are you nurturing them with information that's not necessarily asking about a sale, but helping them get the most out of the one they made? And then through that journey, that nurturing journey, asking them for a deeper commitment, another sale, a bundle, whatever that looks like in your business. So nurture, ask for commitment. And so you might want to think about things like, well, how many messages would I need to send on a nurturing? And what would my nurturing step be? Is it a how to use the product or get the most out of it, right? So now you want to spend your time writing and reflecting, right? So you're going to take this action of revisiting your customer journey and thinking about whether you have all the steps. So as you write and reflect, you can write and reflect on things that didn't work in the past, right? That's always a good one. Also, things that did work. If you have long-term happy customers that aren't the one and done type, examine them. What makes them happy and stay. So that is how you would go to a book with a problem, ultra read it, figure out a solution, and then immediately get into action, as opposed to saying, oh, I'm going to read this cover to cover, and then I don't know what step to take or what action to take in my business. I hope this was helpful. This is just part 1. And part 2, we're going to come back and revisit this book for another strategy around lead generation. So make sure that you like and subscribe to the channel so you never miss another episode of Business Growth Simplified.